You just have to trust me because you can't see the end from the beginning. I can see the end from the beginning, and I can allow all these ripples to go forward and bring good in the end. This is why the Christian can be confident.
Question. I recently saw a meme that said this person could not believe in a God who would cause suffering, meaning Job, just to win a bet with the devil. How would you respond to that?
I would ask, by what moral standard are you judging God for that? And I would also ask them, have you ever allowed your children to go through any sort of pain and suffering for a reason? In fact, Alisa, you just brought it up earlier in the program, right? You were pointing out about going to the dentist, right? That you got to take your kid to the dentist sometimes, and the kid doesn't want to do it, but the kid's going to have to do it for a greater good. So it presupposes a moral standard, number one. Number two, we do that with our own kids. Sometimes we allow them to go through difficulty in order to bring forth the greater good. Number three, when we see something that we don't quite understand, we can't see, why would God allow such a thing to happen? We've got to take account of what's known as the ripple effect, that every event that occurs ripples forward into the future to affect trillions of other events. We can't see how all those ripples move forward in time. God can. God's outside of time. He can see the end from the beginning. We can't. Typically, the question is asked this way. Say a couple in a church have a baby that gets sick, and they say, please pray for our baby. This is a serious illness. And the whole church prays, and the baby dies anyway. And you go, I mean, the whole church is praying God? I mean, how does this make any sense? Well, it doesn't make any sense from a temporal perspective. So when someone asks, why do babies die? We can say, well, we know why babies die in general. This is a fallen world. Not everything's going to work out right. But if you're going to ask me, why did this baby die? I don't know, but I know why I don't know. I'm inside of time. I can only see a very small speck of time. I can't see the whole picture. God can. Maybe a baby dying today creates a series of ripples into the future that, I mean, trillions of ripples that 500 years from now partially causes a great evangelist to arise and save millions of people. Can we trace all those ripples? No, we can't, but God can. So what we have to do is just trust God. This is why at the end of the book of Job, God basically says to Job, look, Job, you can't even tell me how the physical universe works. You're going to lecture me on the moral universe? You just have to trust me because you can't see the end from the beginning. I can see the end from the beginning, and I can allow all these ripples to go forward and bring good in the end. This is why the Christian can be confident, because in the book of Romans, Paul says that we know that all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. He doesn't say all things are good. There's a lot of evil out there. He says all things work together for good. And for those watching, if you just think about this, think about how many ripples had to occur for you to even exist, right? Your parents needed to meet. Their parents needed to meet. Their parents needed to meet. I mean, you could go on, and all the ripples that occurred within those lives to bring you where you are right now. So when you see something that you think is inexplicable morally, you can't say God doesn't have a sufficiently moral or a sufficient moral reason to allow this to occur. You can't, because you don't know.
Yeah. And I've heard that argument before, that, that people have rejected even the Bible or God because of the Job story. And they use that language because God just did all that just to win a bet with the devil. No. And I want to just say, to even phrase the question that way, you have to assume that God is sinful, because God would have some sort of prideful motive or some carnally competitive nature that, I just have to win. And the assumption is that it's actually impugning the moral character of God to paint it that way, because the scripture certainly doesn't paint it that way. And it just seems like a pretty shallow objection to me every time. But I hear it repeated quite a bit. But you have to presuppose that God has some kind of a sinful nature that would cause him to do something just for that reason or something. But, I don't know if people
you also have to say that you have to forget that this is written, the Bible's a story written from an observational perspective, right? It's not a philosophy text, Okay. Although when it does speak philosophically, it speaks accurately. It's just like it's not a science test. It's not a science textbook either. But when it does speak about cause and effect, it gets that right. So this is a story to help us understand how God can allow evil in the world. And Job, they think, actually was written prior to the Pentateuch. It was written prior to Genesis and the first 5 books of the Bible. It's an ancient story that deals with one of the most vexing problems, not just for Christians, but for anyone. Why does evil exist? Well, the only worldview that can answer that is the Christian worldview. Okay, that's the only one. You know what the answer to evil is? God takes it upon himself. He adds humanity to his deity. He comes to earth. He allows the creatures that rebelled against him to torture and kill him so he could remain just by taking their punishment on himself and offering the free gift of forgiveness to anybody that wants it. And if you don't want it, that's fine. God's not going to force you into heaven against your will, right? So the only answer to evil is the Christian answer. Nothing else works.
I agree.